I'm Tosha Downey, my mama's favorite child, and you are listening to The Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Welcome back to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. We have on today's show the one and only Roger Entner. Did I say that correct? Roger Entner?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Founder and lead analyst of ReCon Analytics, and he's out of Boston, Massachusetts. And is that Boston or is that Boston?
Boston.
It's Boston?
Boston.
Hey, welcome to the show, Roger.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, look, you are one of the leading telecom experts in our globally, and we'd like to get a little bit of knowledge about ReCon, about you, and where you come from.
Sure. So ReCon Analytics, we do research and consulting for the telecom and media industry. We help companies in that space to better understand things. We also work a lot with CTIA, for example, and help them explain to lawmakers and regulators better what's at stake with 5G. Started ReCon Analytics in 2011. Before that, I was SVP, head of telecom research for Nielsen, one of the largest research company out there. Was working for a company called IAG, measuring the effectiveness of advertising, and before that was running North American Telecom for a company called Ovum, also a large research company, and headed North American Telecom carriers for the Yankee Group. And if I go further back, I worked for one of the big RF engineering companies that build and design networks called LCC.
Wow.
So you've got a wealth of knowledge here, and we want to take all of that. We want you to share that wealth with us as we go forward today. But you mentioned something about 5G, and our audience is probably our audience is fine, but DC's probably only focusing on 1G, working off of that. So can you explain to us what 5G is and why that is so important right now in our world of technology here in America?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
5G is really important because it changes the paradigm of what wireless is really about. When you look at 3G, 4G, things only got faster, basically. In 5G, wireless networks not only will get faster, but latency, meaning how quickly the network reacts, will go down. And it will come with something called edge computing, where basically all the computing that happens right now on your phone, and that sometimes makes your phone hot and constrained, can be done a couple of miles away at the cell site where the antennas are. And with that, computing power goes through the roof, because suddenly the computing doesn't have to be done in your hand, but it can be done by a huge server. So, for example, very early demos, for example, they showed visual recognition of posters. And it took like 10 seconds for the phone to process that. And it took like 2 seconds to do that on the edge. And that is what's really exciting about 5G, is the way we communicate and the way we use our cell phone will change, because the computing will happen somewhere else. And so your phone becomes smaller, lighter, longer lasting, because all the heavy lifting is no longer happening in your hand on the phone, but somewhere else.
How much smaller do you think?
As small as you want your screen to be, but thinner and lighter, because that chip that drives it all doesn't have to be as powerful anymore.
Right.
Yeah, Roger, one of the things, though, that I was listening to a conversation about the battle over 5G. So I know this isn't just about thinner, lighter, faster phones. What is the struggle? I mean, I've even heard it said that 5G is going to be the next Cold War. Like we're going to be in a race.
Yeah, they've talked about that. Sure.
Race with the great superpowers over
Yeah.
5G. Talk about what that is. It's more than just light cell phones, right?
Well, the cell phone is like the thing in the middle, because where that fight is about is who will have the first 5G networks. The United States had like the first really big 4G networks.
Okay.
And look what happened. We had like this huge market for iPhones and Android, and both were made in the U.S. And that whole operating system and the whole software development happened all here. Without mobile, Google wouldn't be as big as it is today.
Sure.
Apple would be still doing Macs only. Facebook, you would have to be on your computer to do that. And so it's like, where does the innovation happen? Where are the next Googles, the next Facebooks that do something completely different? So that's why we have like this race to 5G. And China completely understood that. And so China put a lot of effort into also making the equipment for that. And that's where the whole stuff with Huawei comes in, and
Right.
which is blocked here in the United States from being in carriers' networks before, because the American spy agencies are afraid the Chinese would do the same thing with Chinese equipment that we can do with other equipment. And it's quite well documented what American spy agencies can do. Signal intelligence, and that's basically what this is all about, is the biggest part of our intelligence gathering. And if we're using Huawei, you're always a lot better with the equipment made by your countrymen
Sure.
than by somebody foreign.
Sure.
And they think that the Chinese would use Huawei gear to spy on us. And
So
there's
Roger,
even a
let me stop
Chinese
you right there.
law that requires them to cooperate.
So Roger, let me first of all, you're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. So this issue that our president has talked about 5G and wanting to make sure that this technology is secured on American soil, that's what this is about. And is that the Huawei piece that we're having right now? With I think the VP who's in Canada right now can't move from Canada to back to the mainland because we have a warrant out for arrest. And so is that a part of this whole thing? The agencies have gotten together and said, hey, look, we've got to stop Huawei, because if we don't, and I think that's what I heard you say, if we don't, there's a possibility that China can be the founder of this massive 5G network infrastructure.
Well, the Huawei CFO is basically accused of helping circumvent sanctions against Iran and I think also North Korea.
Yes.
So the arrest warrant is out for that for her. That's why she is in Canada. While our neighbors to the north arrested her based on a U.S. warrant. Overall, the reason why we don't want to use the Huawei equipment, and Huawei equipment they're the largest equipment manufacturer in the world, because they are cheap and have good products.
Wow.
We don't want to have that because it could be used to spy on us.
Yeah.
And at the same time, because they're the largest manufacturer, we need to have other equipment to come here so that all the innovation that we benefited from the Apples, the Googles, the Facebooks, is staying here as well, and that we're not running phones or forced to run phones made in China with Chinese software running Chinese services.
Well, how did Apple, how did all of these major Microsoft, how did all of our major corporations that deal with telecom and with infrastructure, IT infrastructure, how did we allow Huawei to really come from behind? I would assume and assume this position of power, because they do have a position of power if they already have the infrastructure in place, right?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of rumors and documented stories where Huawei used corporate espionage, for example, with Nortel from Canada, where they got their start for wireless equipment. There are accusations that they hacked into Cisco and stole their router things, and then they kept developing it. And we have to remember, China has 1.4 billion people. It's a huge market, and then they sold to their own market and became a lot better. If you look at 4G, 60% of 4G base stations are in China. It's a huge country, and it's a huge market.
Right. And it seems like really when we talk about the war, it's really just more or less a race to produce in order to get revenues. So now I've been told as recently as a couple of days ago that United States right now is somewhere lagging behind. From your impression, though, where are we really? Are we in a situation where we're going to be finding out that the new race is not nuclear, but it's technology? We already know that.
Yep.
But are we going to be looking at a situation where we are trying to catch up over time? And what is it that has us continuing lagging behind? Are we low on innovations? Are we low on getting people in the craft? Are we low on the revenues? I mean, what's keeping us behind?
Well, about 2 years ago, undoubtedly, we were behind.
Okay.
Because what we need for a 5G network is more spectrum.
Okay.
And the FCC has really done a terrific job in making more spectrum available and auctioning off spectrum, and they do that as we speak.
Now, when you say spectrum, you're talking to people that have never. Spectrum is the place where the 76ers used to play basketball. So spectrum means what?
Spectrum means radiomagnetic waves that go through the air that allow your phone to talk with the rest of the world.
Okay.
So, and we just need more of that.
Okay.
In different frequency bands, and the FCC has done a very good job in doing that. So right now, I think I would say we're head on head.
We mean we head on head like with China, with Russia,
China, with Korea, with Japan.
Okay.
And the important part is to roll that out very quickly to create that foundation on which then people can innovate on. Yeah. Because if everybody has 5G, or a lot of people have 5G and can do that, then if you're an innovator and you have a good idea, immediately millions of people can buy that.
Right.
And if your test network is the size of Podunk in I don't know where, then
it's not in
you
Tennessee.
have a wonderful idea and nobody can buy it, right?
That's
sure.
Right.
And in China, where China has an advantage is they can roll this out a lot faster. So with 5G, we need a lot of things called small cells. They're like the size of a shoebox or a pizza box.
Okay.
And they're being put in buildings, on the side of things, on lighting posts, and the alike. China is putting down in a month 40,000 of these. That's what we're putting down in a year. Oh, okay. And that's because China has the rule of man, and they said, we want to be first, so zoning laws don't apply.
Right.
If somebody wants to put up that shoebox at the side of the building, you have to.
Wow.
And we still have the rule of man, the rule of law, and so we're a little bit slower when it comes to that.
We're talking to Roger Entner, founder and lead analyst of ReCon Analytics, and we'll be right back with him right here on Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Funking up your airwaves and jamming the good information in your ear. Once again, it's Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Hi, this is Roger Entner, analyst and founder of ReCon Analytics, and you're listening to Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
We're back right here on Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. I am DC, sitting here with the very best co-host that you could ever have on any show, Doc Ward. Welcome to Doc, and I got Tosha Dowdy.
Doc's rolling his eyes.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know if those were dagger eyes or what, Tosha. You saw that, man? He looked at me like,
I think
go
they're
ahead and go
thinking
there.
as, this 5G conversation is real heavy.
That's right, because we got Roger Entner, who happens to be the founder and lead analyst with ReCon Analytics, and this guy's a global telecom expert, and we got him right here with us in the Funky Politics studio. Tosha, you got him.
Yeah, Roger, you raised a couple of points, and I think you mentioned, but we want to kind of go back a little bit when you talk to our audience, talking about the CTIA you mentioned. I was like, is that like the Federal Bureau of Technology Investigate? Like, what is that? And also, you talked about us being head to head. I was like, I'm kind of doubting our head to headness. So give me some assurance that we are not far behind in this.
That we're not right next to Uruguay or something like that.
Yeah, no. So basically, CTIA is the Wireless Industry Association. So it's like all the companies that are doing something in wireless, and they were very concerned that we were actually behind. And they put together a lot of research and showed the consequences of what it means to fall behind in a generational race. Because every time somebody fell behind in a race, basically one of the industries died and didn't come back. When you look at it, the U.S. was actually leading in 1G, but we were late with 2G, and then our equipment manufacturers, Lucent, Motorola, and Canada's Nortel, they died. They were bought by the Europeans. The Europeans led in 2G. But they fell asleep when it comes to 3G, and all the handset manufacturers died. The Nokia handset group, the Ericsson handset group, Siemens, Alcatel, they all died. When it came then with 4G, the Japanese were actually leading, and we caught up. And all the innovation happened here, and, they had something called iMode. And in their best year, they spent $16 billion for developers just in Japan. Google with Android has never spent that much money on globally. And that died because iPhone came in and iPhone has 50% market share in Japan and basically killed that. So that was like the big wake-up call for the government and for the FCC to say, we don't want to fall behind because it's really bad for the economy, for high-paying jobs, for innovation, and all that comes with it. So right now, I would say that there are 4 countries that are head and head. There's China, there's South Korea, and there's Japan, and there's the U.S. And we're coming on very, very strong. I think we're accelerating and moving ahead quite quickly. So, but the race is far from over. So we have to continue to build out to improve how we can build more cell sites to bring this to everybody in the country so that we can create new jobs innovating on this, because it's not the same ball game as before.
So Roger, let me ask you this, Roger. So do you think that we ought to adopt a policy or a position as China has in terms of with these smaller, I guess, cell, not necessarily a tower, but something that captures those signals? Should we do something like? I mean, we got streetlights all over.
Deregulation.
Yeah, we got streetlights all over the country in our most of our urban cores, and we could simply just start. Hey, look, y'all, we need to do this right here so we can catch up, or at least we can surpass.
What are you talking about doing?
He just said that China has putting them all over the place. These cell, I don't want to call it a cell tower.
Cell boxes.
Like a cell box. You said almost like the size of a pizza box.
It's a box.
Yeah, sure. That's what he said.
It's a pizza box.
But I think you were also saying though that there are certain regulations that
That's
the
what I
United
said. So
States
what
has
is it?
zoning
The
laws and other things
deregulation.
that prevent that from happening. Is that because of the environmental concern and the technology in the box? Is it because the boxes? I mean, what's the reason
a lot
for
of
that?
it is people just don't want to have this stuff. On one hand, they complain that they don't have wireless service. At the same time, they don't want to have the equipment.
Wow.
You know, what's really funny is actually affluent neighborhoods have typically worse wireless coverage than less affluent ones, because the rich folks go to their city council and say, I don't want to have this thing in my neighborhood, and then they complain about not having wireless service. But a lot of cities say, like, oh, we don't want to have this, we want to have less, or we want to have thousands of dollars for this little shoebox. So the FCC has come in and improved that. Now, what would help greatly would be if every municipality in every state would decide this on the same way and have less leeway of doing it differently. And, you know, I've been involved in lawsuits where cities and municipalities simply said no, and then they lose in court several years later, wasting a lot of taxpayer money, and the tower goes up anyway, or the small cell. So, but it looks good for the politicians, because we stand up for your right not to have this thing.
So you're saying basically then, in a nutshell, that the ability for the United States to grow in a technological manner and stay competitive is being threatened by funky politics. Not this show, but by funky politics itself.
Absolutely.
And see, that's why we keep on giving it to you right here on Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network, which you are listening to. Now, on that note, though, given these funky politics, then.
And they are funky.
Yeah. What is it then? So are we looking for national regulation?
Or deregulation.
Or regulation or deregulation, because like you're saying, it's the people on the outside that are coming in saying, you know, NIMBY, not in my backyard. You're not putting this thing that's going to help us, our internet move faster and us get smarter. No, we want to be slow. So those folks
or
on
you
that
make
side
it more aesthetically pleasing.
Maybe it's not aesthetic.
Maybe make it
Maybe
pretty.
it's something else. But I mean, there's no issue from radiation or anything like that, though, is there?
No, it's not.
Yeah, because I know people
Here's
say
the
that
thing.
sometimes.
A lot of people are concerned about the cell phone creating brain cancer.
Right.
When you look at the rate of brain cancer in the 1970s and 80s and compare it to now, that rate has gone down. It has gone down in the U.S., it has gone down in Scandinavia, where they're using wireless for a lot longer and a lot more than we have historically. So when you look over the last 30 years, and by 30 years, you know, it should show up.
But has there
brain
ever been
cancer rate went down.
Has there ever been a
So
link between
if
cell
anything,
phones?
It's good for you.
Has there ever been a link between cell phones and brain cancer? Has there ever been a link at all?
There has been a link with one in a lab rat environment where they blasted that rat for 24 hours with, 50 times what
The radiation on cell phone.
what a normal person would experience.
Okay.
So,
So you're saying if you are just a I don't know, overly obnoxious cell phone user, you sleep with your phone, you talk on it all the time, you don't take it away from your head, then you might have the chance to get brain cancer, but not just walking there.
No, I don't think so. The
Really?
brain cancer rate went down compared to before cell phones.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So
But even if we don't talk about something as critical as brain cancer, but we
Right.
can talk about other environmental effects, right? One of the things that we know is like in China, there are no regulations,
Right.
but the environmental costs are significant. So
But they're not
how
paying them.
about right?
They're not
Their
paying.
grandchildren will. Their grandchildren will pay them. So what of the environmental challenge of balancing being good stewards of the environment, but also being
Right.
technologically advanced?
I don't think there are any downsides. Of all the things we do, wireless is about the least harmful to the environment there is.
Okay.
It's we would be much better off if we would stop using plastic and microfiber and these things,
That's right.
which are showing now up in animals that we eat.
Sure.
Yeah. So then now, I guess, then if we get that radiation thing out of the way, and we're talking about equalizing and moving forward, because we're already equal, then the
But
next
the
thing,
radiation doesn't do anything.
no, I'm saying if we're talking about we've actually buried that radiation is of no effect to
Yes.
it should not be a concern when we're talking about expanding the platform for 5G
Correct.
and for technology here. So if that's the case, then the next thing that we need to be competitive is the manpower. Now I don't think
capital.
we're going to get up to 1.4 billion people at the rate that China's is. I don't think they're losing. I think they're gaining too. So we're not going to get there. But everybody in China is not working in technology, in the technological field. How do we get more people in the industry in a manner that allows us to maintain a competitive edge and those folks to make money and be able to work? Because I know a lot of times you flood the industry, rates go down. So how do we manage to do that in a manner that keeps people working well, getting paid, and keeps us competitive and getting more people in the technology field?
Education. People should need to go to college, and my recommendation is whatever they study, they should have a computer science minor. Doesn't
Yeah, it's a
matter what
requirement.
they do, because basically our cell phones are little computers in our hands.
That's right.
And if you have a good understanding of computers, it doesn't matter if you're an engineer, if you are, if you do sports, if you name it. This is pervasive, and everything. It will be all around it, and in everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
So, do yourself a favor, do your children a favor. If you go to college, and you should go to college, because your life is so much better than if you don't. Also study computer science.
Do you have to get to college though? Can this be in the curriculum before you even get to college? Can we put it in the grade school curriculum? You're talking about computer science.
In
Yeah,
K-12,
and a lot of
coding and
schools
tools.
have
Yeah.
computer science.
Yeah. So we can start teaching the kids at a much earlier age than that, right?
But to be really good at it, schools can give you a start. And if you're a prodigy, you might not need college. But
Right.
but prodigies are few and far in between.
Sure.
Right.
So
We seem to think so.
Right.
but everybody thinks they're a prodigy, right?
Yeah. Well,
No, I'm one. I just
well, we've got.
I've not
two-
been found.
well-
I've not been found
Well,
out yet.
well, we've got two on this show, and then we've got DC, but we managed.
let me before we get out of here, let me ask you one question. I want to ask you something about in terms of what I call equity and inclusion. When it comes to telecom, globally, are you all seeing the numbers hopefully go up in terms of diversity? And I hate to use that term. I want to go back to inclusion in terms of women and in terms of people of color. Are those numbers increasing that you've seen with the Verizons? And I'm talking about in some of the higher echelons of these corporations around the world, Intels and Cisco's. Are you seeing any of that at all, Roger?
In the AT&Ts, the Verizons, the Telecoms, the Sprint, Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is a conscious and deliberate effort to hire and promote minorities, to promote women. It's getting a lot more diverse. I'm in this industry for more than 20 years. 20 years ago, if you saw a woman, they were mostly in HR, right?
Yes.
Now, I know personally, for example, the lady who runs 5G infrastructure deployment. So her job is to build the 5G network for AT&T. She's an African American woman, for example.
Wow.
So there is, yes, absolutely, there is an effort.
So,
But I think who could do a better job is Silicon Valley, I
yes,
think.
I was going there.
But
Intel, Cisco.
the telcos,
Yes.
they certainly have learned that lesson.
Wow. Well, Roger, we really appreciate you stopping by Funky Politics and visiting with us. I'm looking at Doc Ward. He looks like he's got a question on his face. He's good. I think he's just hungry. I'm not sure.
He's processing all this.
He's processing. Yeah, it's that computer in his head, right?
He's computing.
Roger Entner.
I'm 5Ging it.
He's 5Ging it.
On a 2G system.
There you go. Maybe,
Roger,
maybe
we have fun here on Funky Politics. We sure appreciate you stopping by with us. Roger Entner with ReCon Analytics, founder and lead analyst. Thank you so much for being with us right here on Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Thanks for having me.
We got the funk. Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Riffin' on Jazz.
I'm Howard Robertson, one of your hosts for Riffin' on Jazz. Riffin' is your weekly visit with friends where we dive all in to that classic African-American art form called jazz every week on your favorite broadcast and podcast platforms.
Riffin' on Jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network.